Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're really getting into the weeds of commercial real estate, property development, and business sales.
Yeah, we have a massive stack of notes to go through. It's a really fascinating area.
It is, it really is. And, our mission today for you listening is all about constructing these clear mental anchors.
Right. Mental anchors are crucial
Hmm.
because this industry is just full of jargon.
Exactly. And when concepts are fuzzy, your brain just sort of panics, right? Especially in high pressure situations.
Oh, for sure. Like if you're sitting in a big negotiation or taking a licensing exam, if you don't really get it, you freeze.
Right. So the goal here is to solve that problem. We're going to attach a really simple story to each complex idea so the answer just becomes obvious.
And to do that, we need a framework, like a big mental shortcut that you can apply to almost anything in property or business.
And what is that shortcut? Because I know you use this overarching lens all the time.
I do, yeah. Whenever you encounter a complex scenario in this space, you really just need to stop and ask one fundamental question. And that is, who is thinking here?
Who is thinking here? I like that.
Right, because are you looking at the deal through the eyes of the developer or, the investor,
Yeah.
the landlord, the government?
Because they all want completely different things from the exact same piece of dirt.
Exactly. So we're going to use that perspective shifting tool today as we go through these 14 specific, highly critical concepts.
Let's jump right into part one then. This is the developer's dream versus the government's rulebook.
It sounds like a movie title. But yeah, let's start with raw dirt. Concept number one is highest and best use.
Right, highest and best use. The core definition here is that it's the most profitable legal use of a property that is physically possible.
Yes. The developer looks at raw land and asks, what can I build here that makes the absolute most money?
Okay, so let's put a scenario to this. Say you have, 25 acres of raw land.
Okay, 25 acres. Good size.
You could build one massive luxury house on it. Maybe it's worth $1 million. Or you could make it a hobby farm or a golf course.
Sure, physically, all of those are possible.
Right. But a developer looks at it and says, no, the highest and best use is putting a residential subdivision here with 60 houses. Now it's worth $60 million.
Because that yields the highest financial return.
It reminds me of like a block of marble,
How do you mean?
Well, you have this raw block of premium marble. You could carve a simple paperweight out of it.
Right, but that's a waste of the material.
Exactly. If you have the physical space and the legal right to carve a masterpiece statue that sells for millions, then that is the highest and best use of the marble.
That's a great analogy. But the absolute most vital word in that whole definition is the word legal.
Right. It has to be legally possible.
Because a developer's dream of maximizing profit is completely bounded by what the law actually permits.
Which brings us perfectly to concept two, because the law in this case is the Provincial Policy Statement, or the PPS.
Right, if we're looking at Ontario, for example, the PPS is the provincial rule book. It dictates to the municipalities exactly how land has to be planned and used.
And municipalities absolutely must follow it, right? It's not a suggestion.
It is not a suggestion. They are legally bound to it. So let's go back to your 25 acres.
Okay, the 60-house subdivision.
Right. The developer wants the subdivision. The city actually wants it too, because they want the property tax revenue and they want to increase the housing supply.
So everyone's happy. The developer makes money. The city gets houses.
But wait, the PPS looks at that land and says, hold on, this is prime agricultural land. We have a policy to protect farmland for the next 50 years.
Oh, wow. So the province just steps in and overrides everyone.
Exactly. This is the who is thinking here framework in action. The government's perspective overrides the developer's perspective.
So it doesn't matter if the subdivision is the highest and best use financially.
Not at all. If the master rulebook says no, the project is dead. Full stop.
Okay, so let's say the developer gives up on the farmland and they buy an old industrial lot in the city instead. The government gives the green light.
Good. So the zoning is approved.
Yeah, zoning is good, but now we have to dig beneath the surface because the developer still has to contend with the physical reality of the dirt.
Yes, the environmental realities. Which brings us to concept three, environmental site assessments, or ESAs, specifically phase 1 and phase 2.
Right, so this is a study you do before buying a property to check for contamination, and phase 1 is purely research, right?
Completely. It is an investigation. You're checking old aerial photos, looking at past uses of the site, checking nearby industries, pulling environmental records.
But there's absolutely no soil testing in phase 1.
Correct.
Never.
No physical testing at all.
Okay, I have to push back on this a bit because if you're buying a multi-million-dollar commercial property, isn't looking at old photos just like glorified Googling?
I mean, it's a bit more intensive than Google, but I see your point.
Why even bother with phase one? Why not just skip straight to phase two, test the dirt immediately, and be totally safe?
Because phase 2 drilling is unbelievably expensive and resource intensive. You're talking about bringing in heavy drilling rigs, boring into the earth, testing groundwater.
Oh, so if you just start drilling blindly on a 10-acre lot, you're going to go bankrupt.
Exactly. Phase 1 is a historical detective process. If phase 1 reveals that 40 years ago, this specific corner of the lot was a gas station.
Oh, that's a massive red flag.
Massive. But now you know exactly if physical testing is justified, and more importantly, exactly where to aim the drills.
Got it. So phase one tells you where to drill, and phase two is actually drilling for the gasoline and heavy metals.
Yes, and if they find contamination, you have to clean it up before you can build.
Which leads us to concept 4, the record of site condition, the RSC.
Right. Once you clean it up, you need proof. The RSC is the official document confirming the contaminated property has been assessed and meets the standards.
And this is officially filed with the government.
Yes. Think about it from the investor's perspective. You want to turn this old polluted factory into brand new residential condos.
Right.
Before you can pour a single foundation, you have to clean the site, confirm it's safe, and file the RSC. It is the ultimate bridge between environmental science and the business world.
It's basically the green light that tells condo buyers, hey, the ghost of this land's toxic past has been officially exorcised.
Exactly. It makes the land bankable again. But, environmental concerns don't stop at the soil.
Right, which is concept 5. We're moving from the soil outside to the air inside. Volatile organic compounds, VOCs.
Yes. VOCs are chemicals released into the air from building materials, things like paint, carpet glue, cleaning chemicals.
And this really affects indoor air quality, which is why green buildings actively try to use low VOC materials.
Exactly. You know that sharp, strong smell when you walk into a newly painted office?
Oh, yeah. It smells clean, almost.
Well, it's actually VOCs evaporating into the air. It's chemical off-gassing.
It's funny you mentioned that because it's just like the famous new car smell, right?
That's a perfect analogy.
Like for everyone listening, you know that satisfying new car smell. You're actually just breathing in a bunch of evaporating chemicals from the plastics and adhesives.
Which is not great for you. And that's why modern developers are so focused on low VOC alternatives. They want healthy, breathable indoor air to attract high-paying tenants.
Okay, so let's shift perspectives again. The land is legal, the soil is clean, the air is safe. Now the building is actually up.
Right, the architecture of profit. How do landlords structure the space to actually make money?
Which brings us to concept 6, the building core in office building design.
So the building core is the central area of a tower that contains all the essential services. The elevators, the staircases, washrooms, mechanical systems.
Like if you're in a downtown office tower, all those things are clustered right in the middle of the floor. And the actual offices wrap around the outside perimeter.
Yes. And a lot of people think that's just an architectural whim, or maybe just to give everyone a window.
But it's actually an economic strategy, isn't it?
100%.
Huh.
Look at it through the landlord's eyes. Having a central core allows them to chop up that outer perimeter.
Oh, so they can put multiple different tenants on a single floor.
Exactly. 4 different companies can share the same floor, all accessing the same central bathrooms and elevators without sacrificing their own rentable square footage.
Wow. So the architecture itself is serving the landlord's profit model.
It really is. Everything is curated, which perfectly sets up concept 7, the exclusive use clause.
Yes, the exclusive use clause. This is a lease clause that gives a tenant the exclusive right to sell certain products within a property.
So imagine a local coffee shop. They sign a lease in a big shopping mall.
Right, and they add an exclusive use clause for selling coffee.
Exactly. And that legally blocks the landlord from turning around and leasing another unit in that exact same mall to a Starbucks.
Which totally changes how you look at a shopping mall.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. I always thought a mall was just a free market. But it's not. It's this highly curated, artificially protected ecosystem.
Totally artificial.
Like, these businesses aren't just competing by having a better product. They're competing because they have better lease lawyers who locked out the competition.
Right. They negotiated a localized monopoly. But getting those tenants to sign in the first place requires some incentives, which is concept 8, the rent-free period.
Ah, yes, the rent-free period. This is an incentive where a tenant doesn't pay rent for a specific duration.
Usually used by landlords to attract businesses, yeah.
So, say a tenant signs a 10-year lease at $10,000 a month. The landlord says, hey, I'll give you the first 3 months rent-free to help with your renovation and moving costs.
Right. And on the surface, that sounds really generous, doesn't it?
It does. But again, who is thinking here? Why would a landlord just give away $30,000?
Because the landlord wants to lock in a 10-year tenant at that high $10,000 rate on paper.
Wait, so they do it to protect the paper value of the lease?
Exactly. Because if they permanently lowered the rent to, say, $9,000 a month instead of giving free months, the overall valuation of the entire building drops.
Because building values are based on the monthly rental income.
Yes. Future investors look at the rent roll. By giving a temporary rent-free period, the landlord protects the long-term, multi-million-dollar valuation of the asset.
That is so calculated. It's brilliant, but it's calculated.
Oh, it's entirely mathematical.
But putting all these tenants in a building means you're putting faith in human beings to actually pay their rent for 10 years.
And human beings are unpredictable. Their finances fluctuate.
Right. So how do landlords protect themselves from that risk? That brings us to part 4, managing liabilities. Concept 9, guarantor versus co-tenant.
This is a massive distinction in commercial leasing. It dictates exactly who is on the hook when the money stops flowing.
Okay, so a guarantor is basically a backup payer. They promise to pay only if the primary tenant fails.
Right. Whereas a co-tenant is equally responsible for the lease from day one. They share what's called joint and several liability.
Joint and several liability. Okay, so let's say a father is helping his daughter open a retail store in a plaza.
Good example.
If the father signs as a guarantor, the landlord can only come after him for the money after the daughter officially stops paying and defaults.
Yes, there is a sequence to it. The primary tenant has to fail first.
But if they sign as co-tenants, the landlord can just demand the rent from either the father or the daughter at any time. They're both equally on the hook.
Exactly. Which is why landlords vastly prefer co-tenants.
Yeah.
It gives them immediate access to the deepest pockets.
But wait, if I'm the father, or if I'm just helping a friend out, I obviously want the shield of being a guarantor. I don't want to be a co-tenant.
Of course you don't.
So why would a landlord ever accept a guarantor? If a co-tenant agreement gives them so much more power, why not just demand that every time?
Because of leverage. It all comes down to the realities of commercial leverage. Landlords will absolutely push for co-tenancy.
Right.
But what if the market is slow? What if they have a vacant unit that's bleeding money every month and they desperately need it filled?
Oh, so if they're desperate, they compromise.
Exactly. Accepting a guarantor is the compromise they make to secure the deal when the tenant has the upper hand.
Wow. So the legal paperwork just reflects who had more leverage on the day they signed.
That's all a contract really is, yeah.
Okay, so the building is full, the leases are signed, liabilities are managed. Now we move to the final stage.
Part 5. The anatomy of a sale. The owner wants to sell the whole operation.
The big payout. So what happens when ownership actually changes hands? That brings us to concept 10, Schedule A in commercial purchase agreements.
So when you buy a huge commercial property, the standard boilerplate contract doesn't cover anything specific. You need Schedule A.
It's basically a vital section attached to the agreement that contains all the customized clauses, right?
Yes. It has the seller warranties, specific property conditions, a list of exactly what equipment is included, all the specific legal protections.
It essentially tailors a generic contract to the actual reality of a multi-million-dollar deal.
Exactly. And one of the most important things you can put into a Schedule A is Concept 11, a warranty that survives closing.
A warranty survives closing. That sounds intense.
It is. It's a promise made by the seller that remains legally valid even after the property sale is completely finished.
Okay, give me an example of how that plays out.
Say the seller puts in the contract that they warrant the electrical system was installed legally with permits.
Okay, standard promise.
So the buyer moves in, the deal closes, the money changes hands. But a month later, the buyer brings in an electrician and discovers the whole electrical system was an illegal, unpermitted fire hazard.
Oh, wow. In a normal house sale, you bought it. It's your problem now.
Right, but because this specific warranty survived closing, the buyer can actually still sue the seller to pay for the repairs.
That totally shatters the illusion of a clean break.
It really does. People think a sale is just handing over the keys and walking away. But with surviving warranties, there is this invisible tether of liability that connects the buyer and the seller long after the deal is done.
That is wild. Okay, so what if you're not just buying the building, but you're buying the business inside it too?
Then you run into Concept 12, financial statements in business sales, specifically under TRISA here in Ontario.
Right, Teresa. So when selling a business, the buyer normally has to be provided with the financial information, tax returns, profit and loss, all that.
Because you need to know if the business actually makes money.
But the wild thing is, buyers actually have the legal right to waive receiving those statements. They can say, no thanks, I don't want to see your books.
They can, yes.
Hmm.
But if they do that, they are legally required to sign a document explicitly acknowledging the massive risk they're taking.
It's just like buying a used car and actively refusing to look under the hood. Like, the law allows you to do it, but the dealer makes you sign a piece of paper that basically says, I am knowingly blindfolding myself, and if the engine explodes tomorrow, it's my fault.
That's exactly what the TRISA waiver does.
Yeah.
It protects the seller from a buyer who willingly skips their due diligence.
But assuming a buyer isn't crazy, and they do look under the hood, they want to see Concept 13, right? Incremental earnings.
Yes, incremental earnings.
Right.
This is profit that increases gradually and steadily over time.
So, like, year 1 is $100,000 in profit. Year 2 is $120,000. Year 3 is $140,000. Just a nice, steady staircase.
Exactly. And applying our framework, who is thinking here, investors absolutely love this.
Because it's predictable.
Highly predictable. A lot of people think investors want to see wild, unpredictable spikes in revenue, like a company that goes viral and makes millions overnight.
But they don't.
Not institutional buyers. Because wild spikes are unpredictable. They are incredibly hard to replicate. Steady incremental growth proves the business model is solid and the management is competent. It's much safer to buy.
Okay, so the investor loves the financials. They agree to buy the property and the business for, let's say, $2 million.
$2 million, deal is closed.
Deal closed. But the math isn't over. Which brings us to our final concept, Concept 14, purchase price allocation.
Yes. The accounting process of breaking down that single massive purchase price into different specific asset categories.
Right, like land, building, equipment, all the chattels. You have to break it down for tax purposes.
Exactly. Because you didn't just buy one thing, you bought a bundle of things.
So out of that $2 million, you might say, okay, $800,000 is for the land, $1 million is for the physical building, and $200,000 is for the equipment inside.
And why this matters, why the legal and accounting teams fight so hard over this allocation at the finish line, is because different assets are taxed and depreciated differently by the government.
Wait, really? The government treats the land differently than the building?
Completely differently. You can depreciate equipment really fast because it breaks down. You can depreciate a building slowly. You cannot depreciate raw land at all. Dirt never wears out.
Oh. So if I'm the buyer, I want as much of that $2 million assigned to the equipment as possible so I can write it off on my taxes.
Yes. You want to minimize the land value, but the seller wants the exact opposite. Because if they assign too much to the equipment, they might get hit with a massive tax penalty called recapture.
So that single $2 million number you see on the press release is really just for the headline.
Exactly. The allocation spreadsheet is where the real financial engineering happens behind closed doors.
Wow. Okay, we have covered so much ground today. Let's do a quick recap.
Let's do it.
We started with raw dirt, looking at a developer's highest and best use, and how that dream can be instantly killed by the government's provincial policy statement.
Right. Then we navigated environmental testing with Phase 1 and Phase 2 ESAs, and how the record of site condition acts as the ultimate clearance document.
We talked about building safely with low VOC materials, and then we went inside the building to see how landlords use a central core to maximize their rental space.
We saw how they negotiate exclusive use clauses to create artificial monopolies, and how they use rent-free periods to manipulate their overall building valuation.
Then we looked at the human risk, right? The crucial difference between having a guarantor as a backup versus a co-tenant who shares the liability from day one.
And finally, we sold the whole asset. We saw how Schedule A uses surviving warranties to keep sellers on the hook.
We talked about waiving financial statements under TRESA, the beauty of steady incremental earnings, and how the purchase price allocation is the final tax battleground.
14 fuzzy concepts, all anchored down.
Yeah, by attaching these simple stories and asking who is thinking here, they really have become rock-solid mental anchors.
I completely agree. And, I want to leave everyone listening with one final thought to mull over.
Oh, I love these. Go for it.
The next time you walk into a coffee shop in your local mall, just take a minute and look around.
Okay.
You weren't just standing in a room buying a latte. You are standing inside a highly calculated building core. You're breathing low VOC air.
Right.
You are surrounded by the invisible legal boundaries of exclusive use clauses. The owner of the shop might be tied to a surviving warranty or a joint liability co-tenancy.
It's true.
How many invisible rules and fiercely negotiated contracts are quietly dictating the physical reality of the exact room you are sitting in right now?
That is wild to think about. There is a whole invisible world operating right on top of us. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.